yes or no question. And we're going deep into the KGW vault for President's Day. I didn't even know we had video from the 1930s down there. Here's the story. All right, let's shake it out. It's a Monday. It's a holiday. You're here. I'm here. We should probably try and enjoy ourselves. Seriously, I love the vault. Don't you love the vault? It's full of surprises. We've been digging around down there looking for stuff for you. We really think you're going to love what we found today. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this President's Day holiday. Hopefully you got the day off. If not, hey, I feel you. This is the story. I'm Dan Haggerty. This is the show where we kind of make you part of the story. All you have to do is talk to us. So pick up your phone, use the hashtag HeyDan. Email us, hit me up on Instagram, use Facebook. Anything goes. So let's get going. And I really hate to bring down the mood on this holiday, but this is kind of a big deal, so I think we should start with it. Oregon's Department of Energy has learned a Montana company has been illegally dumping radioactive waste in Oregon since 2016. What feels like a lot of radioactive waste to you? 25 pounds? Does that feel like a lot? Well, they dump more than that. How about 2,500 pounds? No, still higher. More than 250,000 pounds. I'm going to keep going because they dumped 2.5 million pounds of radioactive waste since 2016. Now, the Energy Department has issued a notice of violation to Chemical Waste Management. It operates a hazardous waste landfill in Arlington. Now, here's how it all shakes out. Here's how this worked. A North Dakota company called Goodnight Midstream provides recycling services for fracking operations, and that waste they create can qualify as radioactive. Goodnight Midstream hires a Montana company called Oilfield Waste Logistics, and they are the ones who have been dumping the waste in Arlington. Now, the folks at Columbia Riverkeeper, they're not too happy about that. And it brings us to tonight's quote of the day from Dan Saris, the conservation director there. He says, quote, "Oregon will not be a dumping ground for radioactive waste," despite the fact that it has been. Aside from the obvious environmental concerns, Sarah says the waste could be harmful for workers who work at that landfill and don't know what they're dealing with, or for the communities that live up and down those shipping lines. He's demanding an independent investigation. As of right now, the Department of Energy says that it won't fine the landfill for accepting the waste because they believe the operators just misunderstood Oregon's guidelines and had no idea that what they were doing was against the law. In tonight's big story, closing arguments in the Max stabbing trial. They're happening on Wednesday, and ahead of that, we kind of want to step back a bit and reframe how we're talking about this case. Because since the stabbings happened, we've shown you these photos a lot. That's Jeremy Christian, the defendant, on the left. Then you see the three men he stabbed and has admitted to stabbing. Ricky Best and Talisha Namkai Meche in the middle both died. Micah Fletcher on the right survived. Their names, their faces have become synonymous with that deadly attack in 2017. Tonight, though, we want to show you four more faces. That's Walia Muhammad, Destiny Mangum, Sean Ford, and Demetria Hester. Walia and Destiny were the two teenage girls Christians accused of targeting with a racist rant on that train. Ford is the retired Marine who stepped in to block Christian's view of the girls. And Hester is the woman he's accused of attacking the night before. Four innocent people, four people of color, whose lives were changed drastically that day by a self-proclaimed white supremacist. And to that point, communities of color here in Portland are watching this case very closely. We want to bring in Maggie Vespa now, and this is something that people have been paying attention to from the time the stabbing happened, and then it seemed to really come back again over the past few weeks of this trial.
100%. So actually, we're not allowed to film in the hallways of the courthouse, but on day one of this trial, I was in the hallway of the courthouse, right outside the courtroom, when I saw a woman named Teresa Rayford, and we know her here at KGW. She's an advocate for Portland's African-American community, and she was there to support Walia and Destiny as they were among the first to take the stand. And she's been watching the case ever since, and it turns out she's far from the only one.
He was saying Muslims, saying go back to Saudi Arabia.
On day one of the deadly Max Stabbings trial, we saw strength through tears.
This made me feel like, why? Like, there's no reason.
Destiny Mangum and Walia Muhammad were among the first witnesses to take the stand. Off camera, Teresa Rayford watched.
The black community has watched this play out generation after generation.
Rayford is head of Don't Shoot PDX and a vocal advocate for her hometown's African-American community. That day, she came to court to support the two black girls terrified by a self-described white supremacist.
I wanted people that were showing up, their grandparents, their aunts, their family members, them, to see that they are being supported by the community that stands up for black lives.
Rayford also showed up for Demetria Hester, the woman who testified Christian attacked her the night before the stabbings. She said he threw a Gatorade bottle at her face after yelling things like
that he was a Nazi and that he hated all Muslim, blacks, Jews, and wanted to kill them.
Hester called police, but Christian ran off that night and no one tracked him down. Her testimony came a couple of days after Sean Ford's. The retired Marine was the first person who tried to get Christian to calm down as he ranted about race and religion on the day of the stabbings. He stepped between Christian and the girls and said he expected Christian to call him the N-word.
I just wanted him to focus on me. That's it. That's all I could think of was I didn't want him to focus on them anymore.
After several minutes of ranting, Christian admits he stabbed 3 other men who either intervened or stood nearby. Ricky Best and Talesian Numkai Meche died. Micah Fletcher survived. It happened in May of 2017. Christian has pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. Rayford has a hard time with that.
When you see a black person on media or any kind of publication and we're talking about crime, we don't defend them with mental illness. We don't defend them with PTSD. We don't defend them with a hardship. We talk about the violence and the attributes of that violence and how it's a concern for all of us to be safe.
Someone else who has trouble stomaching that defense is Zakir Khan. He's the spokesperson for the Portland chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, and he's been watching this case closely too, because on the day of the stabbings, Walia was wearing a hijab. In court, she testified she's too afraid to wear it anymore.
Well, I think Muslim women across the country, this is a decision that they unfortunately are having to make. Do they need to take steps to do what's needed to feel safe?
Now, days from deliberations, Khan says Portland's Muslim community is watching closely.
The district attorney's job has done a really great job of letting people have space to tell their stories. And my worry is that we will emerge from this trial and we will not fix any of those systems, so that these things will continue to happen and survivors will continue to not be supported and be believed.
Yeah, they are watching this really closely. Interesting note, by the way, about CAIR that Khan reminded me of is that the Portland chapter of CAIR was actually in the works. It wasn't up and running yet when the stabbings happened, but when they did, the national board got on the phone when they heard about Walia having worn the hijab on the train and said, you clearly need to get this going because the Muslim community needs a voice in Portland. So they did. 3 years later, here we are.
So let's talk about the trial now, which again could go to the jury this week, but we've already seen some scheduling changes so far.
Yeah, just over the last day or so. We were supposed to go into closing arguments as soon as tomorrow, but remember there are 12 counts in this case. So lawyers from both sides said they needed more time to come up with jury instructions and really hammer that out and give jurors a clear path forward as far as the charges they have to decide on. So they postponed closing arguments one more day. We'll have those on Wednesday, and then this will go to the jury for deliberations.
This will be a very busy week for this trial. If you have any questions, things you've been wondering since the beginning, reach out to Maggie. You can also reach out to us here. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. Maggie, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so moving on here, you might have heard that the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is cutting ties with volunteer search and rescue teams that respond to those calls up on Mount Hood and the surrounding areas. Instead, the department is forming its own smaller team. Now, that means fewer people will be able to go out on these search and rescue missions. So we asked the sheriff why he's doing this, and he pointed to this study. It says that uniting all the rescuers under a single team is best for Clackamas County, but the study also points out some of the problems with that. For instance, the sheriff's office would have to create its own training academy and get more equipment. They also think that that will cost about $500,000, and the study flat out says it is doubtful the sheriff's office has enough funding in their current budget to be able to do this without using the volunteer teams. Now, the volunteers say they're already specialized and trained and ready to do these rescues on Mount Hood. They're hoping that they can come up with some sort of deal with the sheriff's office so that they can still help out.
We just hope there's not an impact on public safety, and that's why we intend to continue to be available, and that's why we want to work with the sheriff's office to meet his objectives.
We should mention the sheriff's also says he's doing this because of a lawsuit from a family of a climber who died on Mount Hood a few years ago. All right, quick cap and trade update for you. The bill is still making its way through the Oregon legislature. We're paying attention to that so you don't have to. Lawmakers actually just wrapped up a hearing on it where they added yet another amendment. Throughout the process, we've seen a bunch of different protests, both from people for and people against cap and trade. The guys, of course, with the big trucks and the loud horns, they tend to be against it. They're worried that the bill will rise the price of gas. But earlier today, we saw about 100 student climate activists march to the Capitol, telling lawmakers to pass this bill.
I am here to speak my concerns about climate change and to ask you to take into action.
Right now it's lunch, but what we've been doing, the youth have been here all morning, learning about how a bill becomes a law, how to lobby your legislator, and we have about 140 students, I believe, from all over the state, and it's really impressive because they have the most at stake when it comes to climate action.
And one thing, just as I'm growing up, that I've been thinking about a lot with climate change is I'm concerned if I can even start a family, if it's worth it to start a family, if they'll have a future.
And these kids or youth are filled with courage and are stepping out.
We're waiting to go and talk with one of the senators who represents our district and let them know that we want bold climate action now, specifically in the form of Senate Bill 1530.
You're here to primarily talk about the climate issue. Just talking is one of the main things. I think you have to create a relationship. You need to know who they are and why they're concerned.
What do you think would be the next steps after this bill is passed?
The fact is, it connects with other states and other provinces, and that's going to be important. I'm really pleased to see them down here. It's going to affect them. They're going to live through it, and so they want to actually get something done about it. I think that's great.
Hey, real quick, something I wanted to mention. We wanted to talk about something that happened over the weekend when more than 600 people came together at PSU. Former governors, sitting senators, and everyday people smart enough not to get into politics. All to pay respects to Portland City Commissioner Nick Fish. You probably know by now that Fish died on January 2nd after a fight with stomach cancer. And while politicians often get a bad rep, Fish, by many accounts, was different. Former Governor Barbara Roberts put it this way at yesterday's memorial.
It was not words that defined Nick Fish. You could sense his compassion and empathy in a single handshake. When he looked you in the eye, you knew he could see the world from the perspective of others.
We've heard a lot of that. People who worked with Nick Fish said that he was the epitome of a public servant. Mayor Ted Wheeler, when we talked to him, he said Fish probably could have taken his talents anywhere and done anything, but instead he decided to keep them here in his home. So, thanks for sticking around, Nick. When the story continues, we're looking into the future.
It's going to make our life more meaningful. It's going to make our jobs more rewarding.
Right, if your job still exists in the next 10 years, of course. And how the heck does George Washington's birthday always fall on a Monday? The President's Day edition of How Did We Get Here?
If you think the United States has stood still, who built the largest shopping center in the world? The Lloyd Shopping Center, right here.
How is George Washington's birthday on a Monday every year? Well, it's not technically. Actually, you can thank Congress for this long President's Day weekend, and really all of those 3-day weekends that we get throughout the year. So, how did we get here? For this one, we have to go way back to the 1880s. That's when the U.S. first celebrated George Washington's birthday as a federal holiday. It wasn't until 1968 that Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Bill. That made it so those bank holidays like Memorial Day and Veterans Day all fell on a Monday, so workers could get a few 3-day weekends out of the deal, as a treat. While debating that bill, Congress discussed renaming today President's Day instead of just George Washington's birthday. Frankly, because Washington's birthday is just 10 days after Abraham Lincoln's. 2 birds with 1 stone kind of thing. Ultimately, Congress didn't like the idea. But do you know who did like it? Capitalism. A lot of stores started advertising President's Day sales to promote deals around Lincoln's birthday. Now it's kind of up to individual states whether today is George Washington's birthday officially or President's Day officially. In Oregon and Washington, it's President's Day. And that, as they say, is history and also how we got here.
Well, no matter what you call it, it was a beautiful day around the Northwest. I'm Matt Safino. This is Newport right now. Look at that. Oregon State colors, blue and gold. Absolutely spectacular as the clouds have cleared out over at the Oregon coast, and it's going to remain this way as we go through the nighttime hours. So it really does look great out there right now. We're just going to stay on that for a second here. Wow. Okay. That's all we got. We have a major computer crash there. But I can tell you, we're going to see a whole lot of this as we go through the entire week. We actually get a week, at least a work week, Monday through Friday, of dry weather. Now, we'll have some fog around in the morning because there's no wind right now, clear sky, recent rainfall, that all conspires for a lot of fog. But we are going to see that east wind kick in Tuesday night. That'll keep us fog free on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. All looks good, and then the valley rain and mountain snow will come back, of course, over the weekend. And there's no holiday this week. At least I don't think there is. Dan?
Hey, you know what? You don't need a computer, man. Without the shots, we get to stare right at you. I appreciate that.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
Thanks, man. All right. So last week we did a story. We were talking about taxes, and we got a couple of emails from people at home who wanted some clarification. It was the story we were running about how Metro wants to tackle homelessness with a 1% tax from anyone who makes an income of $125,000 a year, or couples who make a combined income of $250,000 a year. So for context, let's look at our tax burden here in Oregon. Most models, like this one from TurboTax, shows Oregon has the third highest income tax rate in the U.S. behind California and Hawaii. Though, if you look at overall tax burden, which is typically a combination of income tax, property tax, and sales tax, Oregon ranks at 30, according to Wallet Hub. Portland often finds itself in the top 15 or so of cities with the highest tax burden. According to various sources, the most taxed state is New York, and the most taxed city is New York.
When the story continues.
What does the world feel like to live in 5, 10, 15 years from now?
He spent 30 years predicting the future. So what does he think about the next 10?
And more change in our lives in the next 10 years than in the last 40.
And do you want to see what's keeping Portland weird tonight? Check yes or no.
Think of everything we didn't have 10 years ago. Instagram, Game of Thrones, iPads, like every Marvel movie except Iron Man. I know what you're thinking. How did we even live? But just imagine what the next 10 years will look like. Actually, you don't have to, because Tim Gordon talked to the guy who actually gets paid to do that for us.
Get into the time machine and travel with us. Futurist Steve Brown is in the driver's seat.
It is about looking at how technology trends, business trends, and most importantly, thinking about what people will want in the future, putting all of those together to imagine what will be possible in a certain time frame.
Brown spent 30 years at Intel looking into the future. Now he's consulting businesses, municipalities, universities.
Any client that is just trying to figure out what does the world feel like to live in 5, 10, 15 years from now, and how do I make plans to make sure I can thrive in that world.
This futurist is making a bold prediction.
My expectation is that we're going to see more change in the workplace and more change in our lives in the next 10 years than in the last 40. So in the next decade, 6 technologies will transform every business on the planet. And those technologies are artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, Internet of Things and sensors, 5G networking and satellite networks, autonomous machines, and then ultimately augmented reality, when we start to blend holograms into our field of view and see digital information in new ways. Artificial intelligence and other automation technologies are going to completely transform work in the next couple of decades.
And for some of us, our jobs will go away. For some truck drivers, manufacturing workers, agricultural workers too.
But for many of us, it is going to improve the quality of our time at work. It's going to make our life more meaningful. It's going to make our jobs more rewarding, because AI is going to take away the tasks that we really don't want to do.
Traveling around will be a lot different in 10 years as well, according to Brown.
Yeah, the future of transportation is going to become autonomous and operate in 3 dimensions. So it's going to go under the ground and fly in the air, as well as operating on the traditional 2D road network.
And to your health.
The future of healthcare is going to be much more personalized to us, building a real picture of you and be able to predict using powerful AIs whether this medication will be effective for you or not is going to be a breakthrough medication, so much more personalized. That requires the gathering of lots of data. Think how exciting it's going to be when the way that we interact with doctors, the way that we shop, the way that we get educated, the way that we experience entertainment, the way we experience news is transformed in the next decade. Right? The future is built by people working together. So I deputize you all as futurists. Think about the future that you want and then figure out how you can participate in that and get the future that you want to build, because we build it together.
Our Sunrise team is spending an entire week more or less looking into the future. So if you usually wake up after their show, maybe set a little alarm clock, maybe set the DVR and check them out. So you've been talking to us using the hashtag HeyDan. We're going to read through some of your thoughts after the break. Also, we're looking at what's keeping Portland weird tonight. And I'm not going to lie, this one's a little sad. We're going to finish the story next. Keeping Portland weird tonight, it's the yes or no question making people a little sad. Somebody tagged this shed, can we go on a date? Check yes or no. And then somebody checked no. Bummer, dude. Better luck next time. You can't get a hit if you don't swing the bat, though. If you're keeping Portland weird, if you see something out there that's keeping it weird, prove it to us. Send us. We love seeing your pictures. The story at kgw.com or tweet us using the hashtag HeyDan. Had a bunch of people writing in to us tonight using that hashtag. Bill Y saying, what about more equal representation of diversity with these stories on KGW? He's kind of talking after we showed how the communities of color were being impacted by the Jeremy Christian trial. He said, unless it's a major issue that can't be ignored, like the TriMet story, it seems like these stories get swept under the rug. I'll tell you, here at The Story, we don't even have a rug. We want to sweep this stuff right into your house. I think that's a saying, right? Also, we're hearing from Judy saying, I appreciate the updates on the cap and trade bill, but please stop saying that we are looking at it so you don't have to. We need to pay attention. I think you're exactly right. Next time that there is one of these meetings that they're streaming live, I'm going to send you the link. We can watch it together. I bet you from then on out, you're saying, Dan, just give me the Cliff's Notes. Also, maybe my favorite comment tonight coming from Kate, saying, how did you, a newcomer, get the story? Maggie has been out there covering these stories. Where the heck did you come from? Kate, I don't know. And keep your voice down. That's it for tonight. And for now, it's the end of the story.